Hello everyone, I am Mr.P.Y.Kumbhar. Today we want to see setting standards of ethical behavior. The learning outcome of this topic is at the end of the session, student will be able to organize the standards of ethical behavior. The contents of these topics are: first we want to see the introduction, then codes of ethics, then prevalence of codes and ethics, critics of ethical codes, and effectiveness of codes of ethics. And last one, we want to see global codes of ethics. Now, introduction. So, before going to the introduction, let us recall what is the business ethics management. Now, business ethics management means we want to manage our business with the ethically. So, we have discussed in this last module about the business ethics management. Now, what is a business ethics management and the different component of a business ethics management? We have also discussed about the evaluation of business ethics management, in which we found there is a shifting of the perspective from managing the employees and trying to see whether they are doing things in a proper way, following the standards of the organization and business, or they are diverting from it, to the present focus on to see whether the organization is taken a broadly managing and trying to answer to all the demands of the different stakeholders. So, if we are trying to shift our focus to this, whether the organization is managing the relationship with the under demands of the broad social demands, then three important steps are required. First is setting the standards of how the organization is going to behave. Second, to understand who the stakeholders are and to find out how the organization is going to deal with the stakeholders. And third, to access the performance. Three steps: first, setting out some standards, which we talk of as the code of ethics. Second is identifying the stakeholders and finding out the relationship with the stakeholders and how to answer to these demands. And the third is accessing the performance through audit and accounting and reporting. So, in the next upcoming discussion of various modules that we will be following, we will try to discuss in details these three steps. We will start with the first one, which is setting the standards, that is defining the codes of ethics. Now, codes of ethics are voluntary statements that commit the organization, industries, or professions to specific beliefs, values, and actions, or set out appropriate ethical behavior for employees. So, there are basically four main types of ethical codes. The first one is organizational or corporate codes of ethics. Second one is a professional codes of ethics. Third one is industry codes of ethics. And last one is programming or group codes of. If we analyze the definition, we found there are 2 to 3 important keywords guiding this definition. Codes of ethics are voluntary statement, means these have been arrived voluntarily by the organization, because this is what we believe that they will be doing and this is what they will be aiming for. So, codes of ethics are voluntary statements that commit the organization. So, commitment means I understand that I will be doing it. Willing commitment also focus on the willingness of the organization to follow whatever statements that they have arrived at organization, industries, or professions. So, codes of ethics can be at the organizational level, can be at the industry level, it can be for the professional level also, to specific beliefs, values, and actions. So, what I believe that the way I should function in the best interest of the stakeholders, beliefs, values, and actions, and to move in the best interest of the stakeholders so that all of them coexist with each other without harming majority providing harm to each other. Then what is the actions that needed to followed, and also to set out what are the appropriate ethical behavior for the employees within the organization to be followed. So there can be four main types of ethical codes as I already discussed. One is to organizational or corporate code of ethics. Second code of ethics could be very specific with related to the professions, for say professional codes of ethics, do's and don'ts of every professions. Industry codes of ethics, which the industry has decided, like the organization within a specific industry will be following certain rules, principles, and practices, which have been arrived at by consequences by the different organization in that industry and which that they formally agree to follow because of the membership in that particular industry. So programs or group code of ethics, these are belonging again to these specific groups. And member organization or member individuals who are the members of that specific groups so that they can remain as a group member. They have to follow certain codes of ethics which have been mutually agreed upon, and they arrived at a formulated frame that if you are a member of this group, then these are the norms, regulations, actions that you need to follow, so that then only you get recognized as a member of this group, otherwise not. We want to see the prevalence of codes and ethics. Prevalence of the codes of ethics, that earlier it was not so much prevalent, but it is become increasingly common and is substantial rise during 90s, after 90s and 2000s. But it has not been so prevalent in like SMEs and Europe, like it is a less prevalent in SMEs and Europe. Now we want to see what would be like what are written as a part of the code of ethics, like it is written the generally the details steps of the do's and don'ts for how and what the organization wants to do and what the organization wants its employees to follow with respect to certain aspects. What are the organizational preferable ways of behaving? What are the organization guidelines regarding the certain aspects, like organization guidelines for taking a gifts and drives, organization guidelines for dealing with workplace harassment, organization guidelines for discrimination in the workplace, organization guidelines for how to deal with organizational properties by the employees. So this type of what the employees can do and what the employees cannot do, what the organization will be doing, what types of a business organization will be entering into, what type of a things will organization will not be promoting, this type of a detailed things when it is written down, that becomes the codes of ethics for the organization. If it is explicitly written codes of ethics, very detail all steps minutely written, then positive part of it is employ exactly known as details. What is expected of them from the organization and how to behave in what type of a situation. The negative part of this, it is a restricts the moral autonomy of the person to decide on whether to do and how to do in what situation. And when we are talking of the taking a moral judgment, ethical judgment, having a moral autonomy to decide on it is one of the marks showing whether the organization makes people follow. What if things like it is a right or wrong, or it gives a piece of the employees also to exert, like whether it allows the employees also to use their judgment and moral autonomy and invoke other moral imagination to find out what are the possible right and wrong in actions that they're doing and work accordingly. So this would be the flip side of have been to dedicated ethics codes of conduct. So too much ambiguity may lead each employee interpreting that the code according to his or her own way of saving. So the interpretation of it may be varying from person to person, and people do not have in general guidelines what to follow. How much, what are the different points which needs to be covered whilst we are discussing about the codes are conducted. A well written code of conduct is where helpful in acting as a guideline principle. So it is not only the principles which need to be stated, but the code of conduct should also tell the practices that require to be done. If it is ambiguous, it then vague generalized statement of obligation which may appear just like it is public relation mechanism which just showcasing that we are doing certain things but the seriousness of doing it is not there. Now, questionable control mechanism that potentially influence employees' beliefs, values and behavior as we are discussing. If it is too much in depth written thing, it may appear like it is on the moral anatomy of the person to like exercise that moral autonomy to think in a certain way, and it is modeling the people to and like and try to make them follow. And what which may be not right and wrong according to the particular person, and to suppress the individual instincts and emotions in order to ensure for conformity and consistency. Now we want to see effectiveness of codes of ethics. So if then that is the criticism for the codes of ethics, then generally we also have to think of how to make the codes of ethics effective in nature. If we have to understand the effectiveness of the codes of ethics, so first we have to understand what if done will define the codes of ethics is effective. So two things are important in this. One is the effective implementation and administration. So while we are talking of effective implementation, so it can be implemented only when the maximum participation of the member are taken during the ethics formation stages. So the codes of conduct formation stages, because we understand there are elements of organizational change that are getting. Second is how to discipline, what are the process set for disciplining the employees. So likely they are not following the codes of ethics given to be followed, and what stages is to be followed. How many errors is tolerated beyond it is not. Now the global codes of ethics. Here we will discuss about the global codes of ethics. Why we are focusing separately on the global codes of ethics is we have already understood like there are certain differences is in cultures in the interpretation of that meaning of what is right and wrong as part that given situation or that given region or culture. So here what are trying to think or whether it is a possible like can be organization devise one set of a principles which is equally acceptable to all countries which they operate. Because you've seen example like the countries differs with respect to how they think about certain things. One of them is about gifts, second is the equal opportunity for employments. This differs in the different parts of the world. Based on that, we can arrive at a certain values which are equally acceptable through all regions of the world, and maybe at we discuss about the so religions is a just path those higher values. So can we arrive at a some values which are followed universally throughout, and is that efforts we have found like respect for core human values, and it is one of the major things that is taken as the global part of a commitment of ethics. Now, respect for local tradition is another principle which has been expected as a part of a global codes of ethics. So these three important factors like a core human values, local tradition, and to understand agree right or wrong differs according to the context, and it has to be contextual is the particular situation. The references for these topics are. Thank you.